All right, let's talk about questions. This is a super exciting part of grammar. I love questions. This is where movement starts to come in and you get to see how things transform. It's just amazing. So, yes, no questions, which we'll call a new sentence category, an interrogative sentence or an int s. These are questions that can be answered with yes or no. So, these are did or have questions. So, did you drink my beer in the fridge? Have you ever been bitten by a raccoon? These are questions that can be answered with either yes or no. So there's two things we have to consider. One, if we have auxiliaries in the main verb, what do we do? And if we don't have auxiliaries in the main verb, what do we do? So let's talk about the first case here. So if we have auxiliaries in the main verb, so is, have been found, is eating, have fallen, is concerned as a passive, what we would do is we would move it to the front of the sentence. So if we say Seth Rogen is directing a lot of films these days, if we want to make a yes no question, we just move it up. So is Seth Rogen directing a lot of film these days? And that's it. If we have multiple auxiliaries with the main verb, still, we just move it. So in this first bit, by the way, directing should be part of the highlighted blue part here is directing. Now, with some dogs have been found with more than four legs, we have more things there. So we just take the first thing, we move it to the front, and now we have a question. Have some dogs been found with more than four legs? So you can imagine if there's no auxiliary, we're going to have an issue because there's no auxiliary to move. And we can't just move the verb, we can only move auxiliaries. So before we talk about case two, let's just see how this looks. So to start, what we would do is we'd say dogs are eating food. This might be our base sentence. So this has a progressive auxiliary first. So in order to form the question, we take our auxiliary in the initial position and we move it up to the front. And this is where we create our new interrogative sentence, int s. So this signals that if you're at this layer this high, you now have a question. So above the sentence, there's this question bit, and this is where our auxiliaries will move. So let's take a look at the second example. Kids have been eating food. So we have been eating. That's our main verb chain, a perfect progressive and transitive verb. So what we'll do to form the question is we're going to target the perfect. We're going to create a new interrogative sentence layer above, and we're going to move that perfect up into that position. So this is what we get on the left side. Perfect has been moved up to the interrogative sentence, and we get have kids been eating food. So we just leave these little markers. So this is the empty set. This just means there's nothing there. We just leave a marker there to show that that's where the word originally came from in the original declarative sentence. And this is what we've done for transformations to make a question. I think it's so cool. And we're going to look at case two in the next subsection. Okay, what happens when we want to form a yes-no question, but we don't have any auxiliaries? So here's a sentence. The doctor examines every patient carefully. If we want to make this a question, we have to introduce a new word do. So does the doctor examine every patient carefully? And what you'll see here is that does is appearing at the beginning and the verb is losing its tense. So that third person singular is now on does rather than on examines, which it was in the original indicative version. Here's another one. The grades went up last week. So when we want to make a question, we would say, did the grades go up last week? So we insert do at the front. We notice that went is past tense in the original sentence. So do is going to take past tense. And then go is just going to be in its bare form. So at first glance, it looks like we have do insertion, we have some tense changing, and then we have some verb changing. But I want to tell you, that's not actually what's happening. The same do support we get for negation is what we're getting for questions as well. If we want to form a question with a sentence that doesn't have an auxiliary, we insert the auxiliary do, and then we move it. So you love me becomes you do love me, and then do moves up to become do you love me. And this is why do is taking tense, because if we had a regular aux phrase where we have an aux and then a verb phrase coming after that, let's just say it's a VI. In a regular thing, we'd say something like did go. So when you're saying did you go, that auxiliary is moving up. And that's why this verb is in its bare form, its base form. So it's very similar to modals or when we have auxiliary elements. You will love me to being will you love me. It's the same process. It's just an extra step. The extra step is add do. So the sentence you love me becomes do you love me? So you love me starts as a base, but we want to make this a question. We don't have any auxiliaries. So what we need to do is we need to add do. So we need to add an auxiliary that becomes an aux phrase. So this is what we get in the second bit. We have an auxiliary phrase predicate in between the S and the VP like we did before, and now it's moving up into the int S to become a question. Do you love me? So we'll talk about negated auxiliaries next time, but this is the simple transformation. Case 2 is the same as case 1. We can cover them in both ways. It's just if you don't have an auxiliary you want to move, you insert do and you give it tense. Now you'll notice that sometimes a negated auxiliary gets moved to the front. So that chef hasn't baked beans before, which would be has not. But instead of saying, has the chef not baked beans before, the whole thing moves up. So hasn't that chef baked beans before? King Joffrey didn't change his underwear. To be didn't King Joffrey change his underwear? So how can we get that contraction going on with the movement? Well, what's happening in this case is some extra case of movement, which is just super cool. I love it. So in the original sentence, it would be your grandma has not played canasta. So it's like has not, I'll put them back in their original position. So what's going to happen is first, not is going to become the contraction nt, because it can do that. Then it's going to move up to the perfect phrase and form with the perfect to make hasn't, because we can contract with that. The negation can always go to the previous element and contract with it. Then the entire thing hasn't is being moved up into the position with the interrogative sentence, and it's being labeled as a perfect plus a negative. So this is how we can form questions with negative, with these negative auxiliaries. And I just think that's so cool. So let's see if you can transform these sentences into questions. We can label some words, but I'm pretty sure we're probably okay with that. So pause the video, try to turn these into questions, and we'll come back with solutions. So Charles was not a very bright person. Let's just talk theoretically about what we need to do. Was not a very bright person. So we're going to take this element. We're going to move it to the front. This might be a little bit different because it's was not, is not. It's be and then a negation. But this can still work with the same way. We have a chain with the main verb, so we're going to take the same thing and put it out front. So what we're going to get as a sentence is, was Charles not a very bright person? And I'm going to leave even an underline. I'm going to leave a little gap so you know where that word came from. That's important when we're doing this, so that way we can see where words are moving from. Okay, the chef produces high quality food every day. All I see is a main verb, which means we're going to have to introduce a word does out front and take the tense off of produce. And then we can move our auxiliary element up front. So this would be does the chef, and then does is there, produce high quality food every day? Question mark. Okay, finally, Freddy Krueger had been haunting Nancy Thompson. So we have our chain had been haunting, which means we're going to take the first element had and move it up to the front. So our question that we're going to get is, had Freddy Krueger, had came from that position, been haunting Nancy Thompson? So that's the question that we have formed. So in terms of things that you might want to label that are tricky, it's just remembering what type of auxiliary you're moving. So in this case, it was a be verb. So was Charles not a very bright person? Does the chef, this is an auxiliary, do, and then had Freddy Krueger been haunting, this is still going to be a perfect when it's moved up. So in terms of the sentence for this lecture, what will there be for dinner? We've now figured out part of it. We figured, will there be something for dinner? So we've taken our modal and we're moving it up to the modal position under the int s, but we still need to figure out what is going on with this bit down here, which is what the rest of the section is about.